Hey everyone, you're listening to the Simple Electronics Podcast. I'm your host, Dan from the Simple Electronics YouTube channel. This episode is brought to you by PCBWay, but more about them a little later on, because today I've got on a very special guest. You may already know him, but for those who don't, just go check in the description to check out his channel. Another Maker, how are you?
I'm great. How about you?
I'm good, actually. Much better than sitting in traffic, sitting here with my friend doing a podcast.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited.
That's good. We're going to start talking about electronics first because you are a proud Florida man and there is a hurricane heading towards you. So we'll chat about that a little bit later on.
All right.
But electronics-wise, what have you been up to? Because I don't think you've been releasing as many videos as you used to.
I've not. I think it's been over 2 months since I've done a video, and I'll probably talk about that a little bit more. But yeah, I've actually been doing electronics. Like I've been doing electronics for me, which has been kind of fun and a change. And one of the things we talk about is you'll make these projects for YouTube, and when you're done, they just go in a box somewhere or sit on a shelf. But I've been actually doing some IoT stuff, which has been pretty fun. I've been modernizing my house a little bit and building some electronics, and even did some Arduino and ESP32 stuff.
I've talked to a lot of people on the other side of this podcast, and I think you might be the first one who described IoT stuff as being fun. What have you been doing?
Well, so, I mean, if you've seen any of my videos or you've seen my shop, I've got just a ton of stuff laying around here. I do some rapid prototyping, so I'm always building things quickly for other people or for the videos. And I just decided, I wanted to see what I could do with IoT without actually buying stuff. I wound up buying some stuff eventually, but I wanted to do all my first round of IoT stuff, designing my own 3D enclosures and using sensors and parts that I had around here. So I installed Home Assistant on a virtual machine, which can be a little bit daunting at first, even for somebody who programs. It can be a little daunting, but once you get it, you can kind of have some fun with it. And it's kind of part of a bigger project. Every year I've been upgrading my network around the house too. And so I've replaced most of my network switches and cameras with some newer stuff that's a little bit more commercial grade. And so I've been kind of putting all that together. And I was like, I want to just kind of bring this all into one environment. So I have my cameras, and then I took some Arduinos and I put motion detectors, and there's little magnetic door switches and temperature sensors and push buttons and relays and all that kind of stuff, and just hooked them up to some MQTT, a little bit of Node-RED, some Home Assistant, just having a good time with it.
I am terrified because this is around the time where you ask if I've messed with Node-RED yet. And no, I haven't. I haven't. I mean,
we'll get
there. The Pi with the image that you made for me, the orange Pi, is somewhere behind me. I could probably, if this was a video podcast, you'd see me reaching back and pointing. But I'll tell you, it's been sitting underneath the studio lights for so long that the box has been UV damaged.
I'm 99% sure that I made that in like May or June of 2020 because I was renovating a house in Maryland. And that orange Pi that I had was the only piece of hardware like that I had around. And I think I made that image for you back in 2020.
Let's assume it was like 2 months ago or something like that.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Since we can't be sure, we're just going to round up to 2 months ago. And that's only how long it's been.
Yeah.
Well, I did have a co-conspirator that was supposed to be working with me to make a weather station, but that person has dropped off the face of the earth. So I had replaced your orange Pi with a Raspberry Pi with some of their software, but that is still sitting in an air duct somewhere, and the project has long been relegated to the annals of time, basically.
Yeah.
All right. So what was the goal of your IoT project? Is it automation to make your life easier, or is it just to have fun?
So there's a couple things. First of all, I was playing around with just to take a step back, it all starts with the network. What really got all this started was the network. Just to give you the basic layout, at my house, my router comes in, and I've got just a whole bunch of dumb network switches all around the house, as you would. So I ran Cat 5, Cat 6 all over the house when we moved in, and then I've got switches that are kind of like little spider webs for cameras and all the computers and stuff that's in my house. And then my office is about 75 feet behind the house as a separate building. And that is connected with one of those like wireless, they call it a wireless bridge by Ubiquiti. It's actually worked flawlessly since 2018. I'm going to eventually replace that with fiber optic. But then you've got my office back here, which is just, wired with pretty close to 1,000 feet of Cat6 and all that kind of stuff. The problem is that as I've taken on kind of bigger and bigger clients, I was having a difficult time. They won't run internet straight to this building because it's not really a house. And so I've been having problems. I wanted to really keep everything segmented, worried about, either a security camera or, somebody in the house, a guest clicking on something and getting malware, ransomware, or something like that on my network. Like that would be pretty tragic. So essentially what I wound up doing was replacing the important switches with basically enterprise grade switches, so where I could put in virtual LANs and do other things like that to segment basically my guest traffic, my IoT traffic, what I call the house is semi-trusted traffic, and then my lifeblood is the computer that I'm sitting on right now and some of these other ones in this office. And so it started out with having to do that. And then because I was able to do that, then I could get a little bit more loosey-goosey with the segmented stuff and my cameras. And so what happened was I looked and I found some Reolink cameras, which again, Chinese camera company, and I wouldn't put them on my normal network, but I was able to get some really good isolation, and they don't reach out to the internet at all, prevent them from reaching out. But what they do have is they have some built-in decent AI stuff that tells you if there's motion, if that motion is an animal, if that motion is a person, if that motion is a vehicle, and you can do zones and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of got me thinking that if I could use the security cameras that I already have to automate some things, it'd be just kind of fun. And then I got to thinking, well, I travel a lot. So if I ever see a person in my backyard, I would want to have a snapshot and an email sent to me. And so, I started with those kinds of things of taking the stuff that the cameras already give me, and then decided, well, I want to expand on that. So now if I open up my door and it's of my office and it's between dusk and dawn and my porch lights have been off, then it will turn on the porch lights over at the house because it knows that I'm most likely either walking over to the house or doing something in the backyard where I'd want a little bit of extra light back there, and just all those kinds of cool things. But I think you'll appreciate this, and I know Pile of Stuff and some of the other people who watch our channels will appreciate this. None of the stuff touches the internet. So it's all isolated here. I control it. I decide what they can do. And so that's been kind of the fun challenge that I've been having, projects and stuff.
Very nice. I love local stuff. As you know, I've probably said it to death. So, what kind of hardware do you need to do that? Are you just like running a thin client with Linux, or is it more like you've got a whole server blade doing all this?
Yeah. So the Home Assistant actually now is running on because I put it on the semi-trusted network. It's not on my trusted network. I'm actually running it on one of those little B-Link mini PCs from Amazon. And there's a software, it's a little scary when you first think about it, but there's a software called Proxmox that I've just absolutely fallen in love with. You can watch some videos on YouTube. It'll take you 30 minutes to get it set up, but essentially it's a virtual machine client that lets you just install a bunch of virtual machines. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, but this is just a very easy way to manage a bunch of them, and you've just got a lot of flexibility. So essentially what I did is I took one of those little mini PCs that I had left over and I installed Proxmox on it. And so it's got a virtual machine that runs Home Assistant. It's got another one that runs all my Node-RED and MQTT and all that kind of stuff. But essentially you could spin up the equivalent. It's sort of like you take one of those mini PCs. If you want to think about it like as simple as possible, you could basically make one of those little mini PCs the equivalent of 10 Raspberry Pis. And so you can install 10 operating systems. I actually run Diet Pi, which is my favorite Raspberry Pi operating system. I run Diet Pi on there. And so you just do all kinds of fun stuff like that.
That's pretty neat. What kind of specs on the mini PC? Because I'm just looking. By the way, happy Prime Day, because it's Prime Day today and
Yeah,
tomorrow.
bought a couple things.
Oh, did you? I have not yet, but I'm looking here, and something like a Ryzen 7 7840 HS. That's kind of like the newer mobile chip.
Yeah.
I can get something for like $700 Canadian, which is like what, $500 American, something like that, 450.
So I get so there's two and since we'll just go all over the place, I've standardized for my business. I've standardized on basically two mini PCs, and again, I was a Raspberry Pi person through and through, used them for phone systems and all that kind of stuff. But I've there's only two to buy in my mind. The first one is the GMK Tech, GMK TEC N100 systems, and those will run anywhere between, right now on Prime Day they're 127 US they'll bump up to 150, and so that is an N100 4-core 8-thread machine with 8 gigs of RAM, single channel, but 8 gigs of RAM and a 256 gig SSD in it, or not SSD, M.2 drive. And so that machine right there at $135, in my business, I'll use that to run 2 HD AI cameras. I'll use it to run a Proxmox server that has 10 or 15 virtual machines on it. I'll use it to run. It's perfect for installing stuff like Batocera Linux. So if you take a legally obtained copy of Batocera Linux and all those legal games that you've been collecting for all these years, you can basically run everything up to a PS1, maybe clip into the PS2 territory all the way back on one of those things, and it runs perfectly. So the N100 is just a really versatile. If you're looking to get into something like that, it uses, like, if you load it down and absolutely basically prime 95 the thing, it might pull 15 watts from the wall. So it's just crazy efficient, plenty powerful for all this stuff. But then if you need something a little bit bigger, then the B-Link SER5s are basically the next step up. They run 300, 350 American, depending on the day. And they have 8-core, 8-core, 16-thread, usually 16 gigs of RAM, although some of them have 8, and a 512 drive. The other thing I like about that is that most of those have both an M.2 drive and room for a 2.5-inch drive. So if you need extra storage, if you want some cheaper kind of mass storage in them, they're great. So I use those where sometimes I'll just hit F8 when I boot, and I'll boot to the M.2 drive if I want to run Windows, and the SSD if I want to run Linux. So if you're just kind of prototyping crap around, but they make excellent servers, and you might pull 35, 40 watts from the wall, 2 drives in them, gigabit networking, all that kind of stuff. They're just fantastic. So what's the SER5 run up your way?
So right now for Prime Day, it's $390.
Okay. I mean, that is you could use that as an everyday machine. Like, it is a very capable machine.
Yeah, just the mobile architecture for Ryzen is a bit weird. So this would be a 5800H, and the third character, so 5800, the third character, the 0, means it's actually Zen 1. So it's kind of a more outdated machine at this point. But for like $400 Canadian, you can't get much else. Like, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, basically, video editing is what would stop you from using that as your everyday machine. But even the N100s, to be honest, they ship with Windows 11 on them. When I use them for work, I mean, I literally throw the drives out or donate the drives. I don't actually throw them out, but I strip the drives out because of where they come from. As far as the Windows 11 that comes on them, perfectly usable out of the box. $127 machine would be like really capable for somebody to use an everyday computer.
And if you're just looking for a Windows license, that's going to run you close to $100. I'm pretty sure, even OEM.
Yeah.
So not bad overall. That's pretty neat. I mean, you're going to get a lot of flack, obviously, for going on the internet and saying that a mini PC is better than a Raspberry Pi, because I will say the N100 right now is on sale for $200, like $198.99 Canadian, and a Raspberry Pi, let's say 4. Care to guess how much it would cost on Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing you're like $85 there.
110.
I will say one thing that's been on sale lately is the Argon M2 case has been on our Prime sales. I don't know if you guys have that, but that's a fantastic case. If you want a Raspberry Pi 4, that'll allow you to hook up an M.2 drive to it. But that's the thing. So I give away a lot of Raspberry Pis and these mini PCs as gifts. And when it comes down to it, by the time you buy the Raspberry Pi, even at my cost when I get them at Micro Center, that case that I like to ship them with is $50 because I like to put the M.2 drive in it, and then your power supply winds up being another 10 or $15. It's very easy for the M.2 or the N100 machine to be a lot cheaper in the long run, and it's just nicer. It just really is.
I loved the concept of the Pi when it came out, right? It's like a sort of a PC replacement for $35. That was the pitch, but it just didn't live up to that. I don't know if what happened was like process nodes became super expensive, and so manufacturers started making stuff on their old process nodes, recycling where they usually didn't, and now we're getting these mini PCs that are much cheaper. I don't know if it's that or if it's something else altogether, but yeah, the Raspberry Pi is no longer a good deal, even if you can get them from Micro Center. They're great for like tinkering, but you just don't get a lot of performance for your money.
No, and we owe them a debt of gratitude. I mean, they did some absolutely amazing things to create the segment. I think that there's definitely the pandemic caused some love loss, and then when they decided to prioritize commercial customers as opposed to the makers that kind of got them to where they were at, I think people were a little bit bitter about that, and rightly so. And they found other options, and that's part of life. I mean, the Raspberry Pi Foundation is doing great, and what they're doing with the RPi 2040s and its successor is fantastic. But it's a different beast.
It absolutely is. You're completely right on that. I actually have the new Raspberry Pi chip here, and I haven't even played with it yet. So I ordered these at a premium from AliExpress because no matter what, here in Canada, if you want to get something from the Raspberry Pi Foundation, you always have to pay the Canada tax. So, for example, I could pick these up from Mouser for like I think they're like $8 or $9 Canadian, but unless I buy $100 worth of stuff, I have to pay $25 in shipping.
Ooh.
So if I want 2 of these, I mean, you're looking at, whatever, like close to, makes no difference, $50. So I got 2 of these from AliExpress. I think they were $13 each. So I came out about half of what I would have paid locally to buy them from across the frickin' world. Isn't that nuts?
It is nuts. I'll tell you one thing, and there are some very cool projects that other people have done. There's a movement in the retro community where they will put those things. There are some variants, and I think I sent you some links to some last time we talked about the Pi. There's some variants of those that have 8 and 16 megabytes on board, and those variants are often used inside of cartridges, like for an Atari or something like that. And they'll put it in there with the USB sticking out the top of the cartridge, and you can load nearly the entire Atari catalog on one of those RPi 2040s, and it'll emulate all those things, and you can have a little GUI on your Atari and play all those. And those are great. People do some amazing projects with that. There's another really cool movement where they're taking the Pi Picos, the 2040s, and they're putting them on computer expansion cards for, I mean, all the computers like the Amigas and stuff like that. But I'm thinking particularly about like the IBM PC, and they'll use the RAM from the Pico to be system RAM. They'll use the storage in there to be system storage. They'll use it to emulate a sound card. They'll use it to emulate a hard drive interface and all that kind of stuff. It's really awesome. But for me, every time I try to build a project with one of those things, one of the other boards is just a better choice for my projects. I have never been able to sit down and map out a project where that board actually turned out to be the best thing for my project. Never.
I actually went on your recommendation and I ordered the ones that you recommended. And first of all, I have to say, for legal reasons, you could put all of Atari's library on it, but you wouldn't. Obviously, it would only be a scholarly thing.
Right.
You look
absolutely.
at,
Yes.
yeah.
Sort of
But
like, how Americans will measure in anything but the metric system. Like I was just measuring in Atari cartridges because I didn't want to use terms like bits and bytes.
there we go. Exactly. You'll say, the supermarket is 624 school bus lengths from me.
Right, exactly.
It's
Yes.
the same kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I actually have in my hand the 2040 with the extra memory and stuff on it, which is this. It's the shape of the Pi Pico, but it has some extra stuff. I even bought some interesting aftermarket ones that are trying to be the Pi Pico W, and so they don't even use the same Wi-Fi chip on board, but yet it's supposed to completely clone the code from the 2040. So I'm pretty excited to take a look at all this stuff, but it would require me to dig in and get some coding done, which as listeners of the show know, is really not my forte.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, it's not the board. I probably should specify. It's not the board and its inefficiencies. Although the Wi-Fi, not having Wi-Fi on most of those is a pretty big drawback compared to even like an ESP8266. But it is my ability. I don't have the ability to program those state machines, and the things that people are doing with them are amazing. I mean, they're putting them in there and emulating VGA cards and HDMI outputs and stuff. They're doing wild things, but they're people who are doing things basically the assembly code style level on them.
Yeah, I mean, there are coding wizards and then there are coding wizards.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. I'm neither, but I would like to one day join the ranks. It just it's a matter of some motivation,
Well, I learned to code at almost 40. I was 39 and a half when I took a closet in my guest bedroom and turned it into my cloffice and spent $80 on Udemy courses and taught myself how to code. So I don't even think you're 40 yet, are you?
Nope, but I'm much dumber than you're giving me credit for.
I really struggled. I mean, I would imagine that I was probably, if I was in class with other people, I probably would have been bottom third of my class in terms of getting it. I struggled pretty bad, but got there eventually.
And look at you now.
I know. Look at me now.
You're about to get hit in the face by a hurricane.
Exactly.
Damn it. Yeah, I don't know. I bought a Humble Bundle for charity, which is the Mammoth Interactive. It's like their mega course pack. So I've got all the courses I could use. I have bought the C++ book from the founder, the creator of C++ that was recommended to me. It is difficult. And especially when I tried to use ChatGPT to help. For example, one of the soul-crushing tasks that I have to do, and people are going to laugh at me because it's not that soul-crushing compared to most stuff, but is I have to put the links to every single one of my podcasts, like on every platform it appears, in a spreadsheet to send to PCBWay, sponsor of this episode, every month. And I procrastinate the hell out of that because I lose focus.
Yeah.
I'll copy paste and then go into my hyperlink and then edit the hyperlink and put it in. And then I'm like, oh, what site did I do again? And, I go back and forth.
Yeah.
So I asked ChatGPT very nicely to help me code something in Python to literally visit these sites and scrape the data. And it utterly failed. It failed so badly. Like one revision of the code captured a whole bunch of data. But then when I said, okay, none of this is the title, ChatGPT is like, oh, let me try again. And it just broke all the code.
Yeah.
It broke everything. And it turns out it's probably because iTunes is using some sort of like fancy website coding or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it is just, it's impossible for me to wrap my head around what it's even asking me. And I know you showed me that you can hit F12 and go into the inspect element, but everything is like in cascading boxes or some sort of cascading style sheet, if you will, something like that. And I just can't find where the references to anything. Like, it's crazy.
And that stuff definitely does break down. I learning how to code, I would encourage you to do as little ChatGPT as possible. it's so hard. Like, it's one of those things where, we grew up growing up, the trope is, oh, you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket all the time and all that kind of stuff. But the reality was, I learned math in my head, and I learned math pretty well in my head. And even though I do have a calculator and I write code that does math all day, having that innate ability to know that, even if it's just knowing that you were overcharged on something or undercharged just because you have that math in your brain, is really helpful. And I mean, there's ChatGPT, I use it a lot for like reformatting things, and hey, I want to convert this to that, and I'll do that kind of stuff. But it's really bad at some of the logic stuff, and can make some pretty big mistakes.
Yeah, there's that. Don't forget, we are probably heading into what the dead internet theory has been prophesizing about. I don't know if you know the specifics of that at all.
I just heard something about. Go ahead and remind me. I just watched a video on it recently, but go ahead.
Yeah, so it essentially means that because like AI spam is so fast, it's so efficient at pumping out, churning out content, and usually regurgitated content and whatever. And all this free content that's indexed by search engines is what's used to put into AIs to teach it how to be human, quote unquote. That means that at some point, the internet is going to be mostly robots. That's the crux of the dead internet theory. But what that means for AI is that the best data set that was available arguably is before the release of something like ChatGPT, before these LLMs have taken over the internet. I haven't done the experiment myself, but on Reddit, there is a post where someone went onto Google and typed in an image search for baby peacock. And in the results, it was something like 80% AI generated images.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's clearly it is getting worse, and that is the thing too, where it's not like they're not having the quality data to learn new things, that they're sucking down there, and they're learning on their own things that they've generated, which is just reinforcing issues. And even the new Strawberry ChatGPT is just basically asking itself the same questions over and over again and checking its work a little bit more. I don't think it's actually better in a lot of the things it's doing. And I use those tools a lot. But yeah, it's hitting its limits. And I also think, just as a whole, I think that it's really good for people to learn the basics and understand why their code doesn't work, because that stuff will fail you. And not only will it fail you, but it will most likely lead you down a road. And you don't, then all of a sudden, then it just leaves you. So it's almost like, it's almost like you start your project on a road, and then ChatGPT takes you down some dirt road and it just drops you off there with basically no help at all. And you got to figure out, like, you don't know where you're at. You don't know how you got there. You don't even recognize what you're looking at because you didn't write it. And that's a problem.
Yeah, we're going to see what happens, because I still plan on doing that project I was talking about last week about, a simple ESP32 hosting web server that I can, flip switches on and off to activate relays on, and all done via ChatGPT and other LLMs, because I really want to get to the nitty gritty of like a project that can be done by not using LLMs, like something that people have done before. Essentially, I'm pretty sure Pella Stuff has a video about some Christmas LEDs hosted on a ESP32 where his son, like probably a high schooler at the time, wrote code to input color data, and then it would just spit it out to WLED or whatever it would be. And so something that is that simple, I'm hoping that ChatGPT AI can do completely, right? The pitch for the video is essentially coding a project that's over my head without bothering another maker. That's the crux of it in my head, right? And
well, I'm a little offended that you've never bothered me. So I mean, but go ahead with your project. But I'm still, that's right, and it will nail that. It will absolutely nail that. That's something that has been done. If it's been done and been published, it will get it.
Yeah. And so from there is to move on to more difficult things. Like for example, stuff that ChatGPT is very good at is stuff that's very well documented. So when I was doing research, this was years ago because I wanted to make myself a YouTube video scheduler. One of the steps is that you need a Google developer token. And I'm like, I don't know what a developer token is. I don't know how to put it in the code. I don't even know how to get one. And something like ChatGPT is much faster for me to say, hey, how do I get a Google developer token, than to go on YouTube and listen to someone breathing into his microphone for 20 minutes with an animated intro and stuff, trying to walk me through it. I can't do it, right? But ChatGPT, because it read the documentation like 18 million times, it can walk me through it. So those things that it is what it's good for. But then the foundational coding stuff that I don't have, that's where I worry that I won't be able to tell right from wrong.
Yeah. And it's very good at that. And it's also, don't underestimate sending the documentation with it when you're asking the query. A lot of times, like if I wanted to do something and I think, well, there's no way I would know this, I won't export the actual database, but I'll export the database schema. Like, why not tell it the column names? Like, don't have it guess at the column names, just give it the column names. Or, I'll go on Home Assistant. Home Assistant uses YAML, which is it's a very weird thing that like is heavily dependent on the spacing. So like if you have an extra space, if something isn't tabbed in right, it just screws the whole thing up, and that's freaking awful. And so a lot of times when it comes to writing YAML, I don't have it in my head for debugging that stuff. So I'll just send the whole thing in the documentation, tell it to just fix it. And it's great at that. Like it understands, it can figure out the nuances and all. It'll be fantastic. So yeah.
I happen to have ChatGPT open in front of me. And so I asked it what YAML is. Like, what is YAML? And I assumed, by the way you said it, it's YAML. Yep. And so ChatGPT said YAML, short for YAML ain't markup language.
Yep.
So it's essentially self-referential, is a human-readable data serialization format. And it says key features is its human-friendly syntax, which I think you just refuted. Indentation-based structure, which I think that goes with what you were saying. And stuff. So that's interesting that it's supposed to be easy to read, but it's not.
So if I take and some of this is just this. So in PHP or Python is indented too. So a lot of people write Python, but let's just take PHP and HTML. If I were to take that and I had a 1,000-line page in my code editor in VS Code, I could Control A and then I could Shift Tab. And so when you Shift Tab, it's the opposite of tabbing. So basically, I could take 1,000 lines and get rid of all the indentation and put them all just nailed to the left side of my code editor so that there's no indentation. And I could right-click and hit Format Document, and it could look at all the code, and realize, well, okay, this is nested in this, and so you should just indent here and here and here. That's awesome because there's some kind of rhyme or reason to how it's done. The problem with YAML is that the spaces are the only thing telling you what is related to what. So where in other languages you'll have things like curly braces and brackets and parentheses that are like wrapped around things that give your code editor some kind of context of what is part of what group. There isn't that in YAML. So when your code editor is looking at it, it doesn't realize that, hey, your Home Assistant expects this to be 2 tabs over and this to be 3 tabs over, because to it's just a bunch of text. So yes, you can read it, but if you screw up the formatting, you're pretty much screwed. And that's the downside of YAML. Or even something like JSON, which is JSON if you're going to Google it, is real similar, but it has that same. It's very obvious because of the brackets and the quotes, like what belongs to what. And so I don't think there's anybody that actually likes YAML, but I think it's easy for the program to parse, which is why people use it.
That's funny. If you're a YAML fanboy, let us know in the description, in the comment section. Jesus, I haven't done YouTubing in so long. I forgot the difference between description and
And they're not a
comments.
sponsor, but there's a website called BetterHelp. Go check yourself in there if you're a fan of YAML.
Now you're gonna get me canceled. BetterHelp has a whole bunch of controversy attached to it.
Oh, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah,
I've heard of it on an ad. But you should go to PCBWay.com.
definitely. Just a quick interruption to talk about this episode's sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay has been a long-term sponsor of the channel, and I think they're a good match for my channel because they provide quality PCBs for a reasonable price. You can get boards manufactured up to 100 mils by 100 mils for just $5, including shipping to Canada, $15 US, including shipping to USA, $12 US, which is incredibly cheap for professionally manufactured PCBs. I can personally attest to the quality of these PCBs, and so if you want a circuit immortalized forever, check out PCBWay.com with the link in the description. Now back to the conversation. Now, my wife always complains to me about one coding language, and I forget which one because it's either Java or JavaScript. And she says one is awesome and the other one is horrible. Which one is which?
It depends on so it's really funny. There's a picture that you'll have to kind of picture it on yourself. But there's two books written by the same publisher. One is called JavaScript, and it's like 600 pages long. And then there's another one called JavaScript: The Good Parts, and it's like 100 pages or something like that, just sitting right next to each other. And so JavaScript is basically, it was developed to be easy like Java, but to use it on the web, and it was created to do one thing. And basically, people have expanded it to do everything. You can run servers on it. And so it's as good or as bad as you want it to be. Java is a pain in the butt. I've never really enjoyed Java, and it's for Windows. So I would say they both can be pretty bad depending on what you're doing. I do have to write a lot of JavaScript, and in limited capacity, JavaScript is pretty fun. But yeah, they both can be pretty awful.
It must be Java then.
Yeah,
it must be Java that she talks about. Yeah, so that's one aspect of code that I'm just not going to learn. She's been doing a lot of sort of database stuff in her work. Stuff. Yeah, I think, you know what, she loves it too. I think there are things that she doesn't like, which I won't say in case something someone from the company is listening today, but I think she's doing really well, and her boss really likes her work. So I mean,
that's awesome.
But the thing is, she's like 10x smarter than me, and so if she has difficulty in coding but then eventually succeeds, I feel like I have no shot. You know what I mean?
I think so. I'll say this. I have a friend. I spent a couple hours with him on Saturday, helping him with a project. And I was trying to talk him into coming with me and taking this journey to learn how to code 10 years ago. And he never did. But he's a motorcycle mechanic and he ran a business called the Carb Doctor, where he would travel around and actually fix motorcycle carburetors, usually down here with ethanol. Would just glaze up the carbs and all that kind of stuff. And so he had a mobile carb repair business. And so he wanted to make an application that would walk people through all the different steps. Will it run if it's warmed up? Does it turn over? All these things, like basically a big decision tree to walk you through what you need to check next on your process and stuff like that. And because he started with something that he had an extreme interest in, and he understood all the other stuff around it, it made him learning how to code that project. I mean, he wasn't great with the syntax, and who would expect him to be? He's been doing it a couple of weeks. But because of that, he learned a lot faster than he ever had in any of the times trying in the last 10 years. And it was the same thing with me. Like when I started learning how to code, once I found that I wanted to create UserSpice and I had this problem that I really, really, really wanted to solve, it made all the difference in the world. All my starts and stops and all that kind of stuff. I focused in on one problem and learned how to tackle it, and it changed everything. So I think wanting the actual project matters a lot.
Yeah, I don't know if I have that as a motivator because what I think what I crave the most right now is stability because my life is so unstable. So it's hard for me to get into like a rhythm, right? Like
Yeah.
to say, every week I'm going to sit down, at this time to this time and try to pound out a couple hours of courses or work on a project for a couple hours. It's like nigh impossible, right? Like
Yeah.
I even like within the instability of my life, there's more instability because I just hurt my back at work like must be like 3 weeks ago now,
I was
two
going to ask
weeks.
you how you're doing.
Yeah, so it's touch and go. I got stuck in traffic today, and it just made my back hurt like crazy. I guess sitting in my shitty old Volvo with the broken seats. So it's like some days are good, some days is bad. But that's the thing, right? It always feels like there's obstacle and then obstacles and then obstacles and obstacles, and then I just get I get sort of like to the end of my rope with stuff, and then stuff like YouTube takes the wayside because nobody's relying on me to make videos and stuff. The only thing that
Yeah.
keeps me constant is the podcast, and
Yeah.
there are some very vocal listeners that that tell me how important the podcast is. So if you're listening, well, you are listening. If you are, that means a lot. So yeah, that's what keeps me constant. But yeah, I don't know. Like I just I feel like I bounce around from thing to thing to thing, and coding is just one of those things that you have to just keep at it. You
You
can't
do.
stop because now
So I,
it's been weeks now since I've touched an IDE, and I don't even remember how to do the syntax for digital write anymore. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, so I started learning in September or something like that, and it just got to the point where I started to work on a lot of forms, and so I learned all that stuff in mid-November, and then I went on vacation for a week for Thanksgiving, and came back and like literally looked at my computer and felt like I recognized none of it. And it's about the closest I've ever had to having a panic attack, thinking that like I spent 2 months and just completely forgot everything. And I mean, eventually it came back, but just when you're at that stage, it's very malleable, and it's not quite just drilled into your brain yet. And you do have to keep pressing on if you want it to be there. But honestly, with where we're at right now, if you don't think it's going to be a career for you, I think it's fine. Like knowing a little bit. I think it's fine. Just like there's people who know a little construction, a little plumbing, a little coding. Like I think that still serves a purpose. Um, you don't have to be able to pull projects out of the air and just code everything. Uh, especially and even less so now than 2 years ago.
No, it's worse now because now I've got the tools at my disposal, and I don't know why it doesn't work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of like the thing where they said, if you would take somebody from from the 1500s and tell them that one day you're going to walk around with all the knowledge of the world and all the books in the world and all this stuff in your pocket, and they ask you what you do with it, and they're like, well, basically just watch cat videos. It's that kind of thing. So you have all the coding ability of millions of coders that they suck down off of GitHub and use it to make a fart machine.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong with it. It's a noble proposition.
So a little bit more on a personal note, how have you been faring with the storms? So one hurricane has already passed by, and
Yeah.
there's another on the way. I don't know if you're public about which area of Florida you
Yeah. So
are.
I don't, it's, so if you look at Orlando or if you look at Florida, Orlando is basically smack dab in the middle of the state. Daytona would be up and to the right, like on the beach side, Daytona Beach. So they call that the I-4 corridor. So basically it goes from I-4, cuts across the state from Tampa to Daytona. And I'm basically halfway between Orlando and Daytona. So I'm on the right, the right three-quarter area there. So, yeah, we're expected to get 100-mile-an-hour winds type things, some raining, some flooding in the area. We've actually been fortunate. We've had basically hurricanes the last 3 years that have taken out most of the trees that I'd be overly concerned about are already gone. So I've taken out fences and things like that were problems. So and then you never know. My house could completely flood and wash away, but a year or two ago we had some hurricanes that put a chunk of our town underwater, and my area wasn't close to being underwater. So again, it could change, but I feel okay, all things considered. I basically feel like I'm in that window where driving somewhere is more dangerous than staying here. You just percentage wise, especially when you factor in the annoyance factor of maybe not being able to get gas and all that stuff. When I woke up this morning, they said that, I mean, Florida is a big populated state, and 14.5% of the gas stations in the state of Florida were completely out of gas. So, you know.
So tell me then, as someone who I consider intelligent. Now, don't take that as too much of a compliment, because, it's just, when you're at my level, you're looking up to pretty much everyone. But who I find intelligent, but also tech savvy, and also makes his living online. Is there anything special in your type of hurricane prep as opposed to what the traditional wisdom is?
So I do a lot of the calculations about whether it's worth going. And I will say this, I've been a little bit burned because the models, as dire as they are, I just want to back up for 1 second. In 2004, Hurricane Charlie, the one that basically destroyed Orlando, my building was full. I had a big building, and we filled it with all of my friends from the Tampa area because that was supposed to be the last Category 5 that was supposed to hit Tampa. And Tampa had a bright sunny day, and there wasn't a billboard standing in Orlando and barely a roof left in Orlando after that. And that's when you talk about hurricanes, you see the big swath covering the state of Florida, but the reality is it's generally like an ultra tornado's worth of actual destruction that goes through there. So it might be like a 50-mile swath, and really those things moving a little bit to the left or to the right means that evacuating, I mean, it's very, very easy. It happens all the time that people evacuate right into the cause, to the path of the storm. The other side of things too is one of the areas that we were literally considering going during the last one was to Asheville, North Carolina, which would have been like, I mean, they were absolutely devastated. And when does Asheville get hurricanes? So that's part of it. Realizing that not overreacting. Now, again, if I lived on the coast, I would GTFO and not look back, but I don't. I'm 100 miles inland. For me, so my office, I've got a 30 Ryobi batteries, and I've got inverters, and everything is charged, everything's ready to go. I've got emergency lights and all that kind of stuff. I have a lot of retro computers that are basically the only thing that sit on the floor in my office. They're all up in the air right now. I've caulked some stuff and all that, but I mean, that's really about it. I can hotspot from my phone. My laptops are charged. All my code is, backed up to the cloud and ready to go. And I mean, that's really about all you can do.
You fool! The clouds is what are attacking you right now.
I know.
You're feeding it.
I'm seeding it with all my data.
There we go. Yeah. So let's be 100% precise for people listening. If the authorities in your area say you must leave,
Absolutely.
leave. Like we are not experts.
Yeah, I'm not being Florida man standing out there waving my American flag in the back of my pickup truck. No matter how you picture me.
Do you have an American flag and or a pickup truck, or are you a fraud?
I've got a Ford van. I do have an American flag, but I've got a Ford van.
There we go. I don't even have a Canadian flag.
I have one on my van.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Yeah. So do you have like an off-grid sort of solar array? Because I mean, let's be honest, you live in Florida. You guys must have sun like 80% of the year.
I am considering doing it to this office. No, I mean, right now, like I said, I really probably have 30 to 40 Ryobi batteries and inverters and plenty of ways to charge things and all that kind of stuff. And the worst hurricane situation here. So that's the thing too. So there's basically, when you look at and again, I am not telling you this as, telling you what to do, but when you look at things like this, you basically you prepare and nothing happens, which is what you hope for. And then you prepare and something happens, which is what you hope for. you prepare and you get something like North Carolina where everything is just beyond devastation that your solar panels just really aren't going to matter. Or for the most part, where I'm at, a bad time is going 3 days without power to 7 days without power. And so in that case, most of the time you're going to lose whatever frozen food you have and stuff like that. So it really is having non-perishables, having propane, and enough ways to charge your phone and your laptops and stuff like that. I've got enough battery backups that I can get my modem up and running, but most of the time I'm just gonna go ahead and go on cell. So I mean that's really the area that I'm at. That's the area. Honestly, I think that's the part that people prep for the least. Like they're worried about losing their whole house and all that. But I get if it's gonna take my house, I don't really care that much. It's just saving 6 things inside my house isn't gonna really make much difference in my life.
Yeah, we lost power here for 3 days, I think, a couple years back, and
Yeah.
essentially, I was saving. I have a like a solar generator. It's like a lithium battery with an inverter in it, and that you can
Hmm.
plug a solar panel. But anyways, I had charged that up, or it was charged, or whatever it may be, and I was saving it like I do when I play RPGs. Right, you just save all your
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
until the end, and at the end you have an inventory full of stuff. It felt so rich of us. We felt like such bougie people because on day 3 we decided to plug in an LED light and play board games by
Yeah.
artificial light,
Yeah.
and it just felt so weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were people who had lost like hundreds of dollars in groceries and all sorts of things like that. So yeah, I always
In
wonder
in
because
2004, we had 3 storms that were each 2 weeks apart, and we lost all our food 3 times.
ugh, that's horrible.
Yeah.
So, well, anyways, I'm wishing the best for you. As a
Well, thank
Florida
you.
man, do you have a boat?
I do not have a
You
boat.
don't. What are you
Yeah, when I
doing?
retire, I'm gonna have a boat. Yeah, when I retire, I'm gonna have a boat for sure. But no, not now.
You don't even have like an aluminum fishing boat sitting in the backyard, just in
Yeah,
case.
I mean, yeah, no. I mean, I've run camps, so I've always had hundreds of canoes and paddle boats and speed boats and all that kind of stuff. So I've had so much access to that stuff, all my ski-doos and all that kind of stuff in my life. So yeah, I don't have the toys piled up here.
That's interesting. So when the I mean, pardon me for being insensitive, but when the water comes up, right, for flooding,
Yeah,
is there potential for gators to be in that water because they're in the regular
yeah,
water, aren't they?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's so weird. So
Yeah, I mean
then,
they're across the street. I mean, I like if I look out, at 11 o'clock from my house. I mean, there's absolutely gators in that retention pond.
that is just so weird to me. You have literal
Dinosaurs.
dinosaurs that you can
Yeah,
see.
exactly.
A friend of mine
Yeah.
lives in Arizona near Phoenix, and he's telling me that every time you put your shoes on, you have to check for scorpions. And I'm
Yep.
like, what the
Yep.
hell kind of a life? Who lives there?
I'll tell you this. So in it would be about 2007. I was renovating my house, and so I was redoing tiling and everything. I had all my door sills out, and there was this. I had never seen anything like it. We had just 10 straight days of just torrential rain in Central Florida, and it drove. I mean, it was just flooding the whole area, and it drove all the field mice into people's houses, which drove all the snakes into people's houses. And so like I came home one day and there was just this giant I don't even know what kind of snake it was, but this giant snake that was trying to get back out from under the door, but it couldn't because it had eaten a mouse or a rat or something like that, and it couldn't fit back out the door that it came in. And so that night I actually woke up and I was going to the bathroom and I stepped on one of my construction extension cords and I screamed like a little girl thinking I had stepped on a snake. But yeah, when you have that kind of stuff, it drives all the stuff just straight into your house, all the mice, all the snakes, all that stuff.
That is
I hope my wife isn't
crazy.
listening.
Man, so I'll tell you, here living in Canada, I often get when there's either I interact with either tourists or just like new Canadians or people online. They're telling me like, well, what do you do if you go outside and there's a bear? And I'm like, okay, where I live, that's a non-zero chance. but I have never, ever, ever like seen a bear in my neighborhood or in my city.
And we
Right?
have tons of them.
Really? In Florida?
Yeah.
They're all the
Yeah,
old
I mean,
bears, they
I
retire, right?
yeah, exactly. I've walked close enough. I've come close enough to running into one that I could see, like, they're so black and they're like, and I've seen the wrinkles on its nose. I've been that close to running into one. Like, I mean, I'm talking like a foot or two.
Well, that's interesting. So I was just getting to say that.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. I was just getting to say that here, people hear that Canadians live around bears, and then it's dangerous, and that's their Australia moment, right? But I've never ever run into a bear. The only thing I've seen bears like where I expect to see them, like in the forest, but never like around my town. Now I know people that are from rural areas, like small towns in like the middle of nowhere, and they have bears roaming freely, but that's not the norm for Canada, right? Like in Toronto, you'll never see a bear.
Right.
But like you literally have crocodiles across the street. Or
Yeah.
alligators, sorry, not crocodiles.
Yeah.
I know the difference. But it's different. Here, basically the most threatening animal that I could see in my neighborhood are coyotes. And coyotes are like scared shitless of humans, so it's not even dangerous. Like, or actually, I'll tell you, actually, the scariest animal I have the potential to run into in my neighborhood is a moose. So Ottawa.
Do you have those in that area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ottawa is surrounded by green space.
Okay.
And as you know, because you lived in Alaska for a while, they roam like they can roam like hundreds of kilometers in a short amount of time. So every once in a while, they have to shut down a highway to tranquilize one and put it on a giant sled and bring it back into the woods.
Well, that happened. So they we had one of those trailers for catching them. So it's a big trailer with basically a giant culvert pipe in there with a like a Publix bag, like a grocery store bag full of donuts. And so you either catch cops or bears. And so when the bear walks in there, the trap door shuts, and you've got, I mean, they get 800 pounds, but you got the bears in there. So I had a nuisance license, and we were one of the places where they would catch them, and they tranked one and took it all the way to Ocala, which is it's a solid like 90 miles from where they caught that bear. And in 3 months it was back. Like, cause they tag them. Same bear back. Like, it's crazy how far they'll go.
And sorry, is this in Alaska or you're talking about in Florida?
No, this is in Florida. Yeah.
Wow.
We have a lot of bears.
I listen to a lot of Safety Third podcast, usually, and usually the Backyard Scientist, his encounters with Florida wildlife have been absolutely nuts. He keeps talking about like rabies infested raccoons and stuff. So I can just imagine what a Florida bear would be like.
It's wild. Yeah.
All right. So let's go back into electronics a little bit before the end of this podcast here, before everyone tunes out and gives me a 1-star review on iTunes. So you haven't been making videos for a while. And I mean, you don't feel too bad because I haven't been making videos for a while and I still want to make videos. What's been the deal? What's up with your channel?
I mean, a couple different things. So it's kind of funny because it spurs from, I'll say this. I don't consider myself a real YouTuber. YouTube has never been like part of my plan. And one of the reasons why my channel is always so sporadic is because I've just always made videos that I just felt like making. And so first and foremost, like, I'm not trying to please the algorithm or anything like that. I make a video because I feel like making it. And I don't get offended when, like, I know you're not interested in retro computers. And it doesn't offend me one bit if you don't watch my retro computer videos. Like, I get it. But that being said, they take a lot of time. And I've kind of struggled with that a little bit lately. And one of the things I've tried to do is just ask myself on a random Saturday morning, what is the best use of my time today? Not what do I want to do as far as YouTube or whatever. Like, what's the best use of my time? And if that's taking a nap, that's taking a nap, if that's doing whatever, but it just hasn't been making YouTube videos. Now, I will say, I'll spill a little bit more tea on your podcast, because if people made it this far through, they deserve a little bit of some stuff they won't find anywhere else. So I made the video on the 555 circuit. And just a little bit of backstory. So as a kid, I absolutely loved this guy, Forrest Mims' books. You'd pick them up at Radio Shack. They were just these little dinky books that cost $1 or $2, and they explained how circuits worked. And as a kid, there was no way I was going to buy all those parts from Radio Shack at, one at a time to build these little circuits that he had. But I had the books and always wanted to. So I kind of just got this wild idea one day that I was going to build all of the circuits in that book into PCBs. PCBWay sponsors it. Like, I wanted to learn how to design circuits. Like, seemed like a good fit. So I found out that the guy Forrest Mims was, still alive, still around, and I tried to reach out to him. First of all, just make sure that he was going to be okay with me copying his circuits and stuff like that. But he never responded. I had some mutual friends with him, asked them to reach out, never responded, was never able to get in touch with him. I made the video, and I even joked, in the video that I'd make tens of cents from that video because nobody would probably ever watch it. And then 80-some thousand people watched the video. And so it wasn't long after it came out that he was pretty ticked. And I feel bad because he is the nicest human being on the face of the earth. Like, I'm laughing now, but it's just, as much as I tried to reach out to him, like, he was pretty ticked. And he wasn't ticked about the circuit boards, but the thing is that the book that I based it on is not in print. Like, you can go and you can find a couple people have jacked up the price of them when they're on eBay. There might be a couple of them used on Amazon, but like, that book is not in print and not available to buy anywhere. So after reaching out to him and trying everything I could, I felt no shame in linking to it on archive.org. I wasn't taking from him. You couldn't buy it, whatever. So, well, it comes to find out that he had republished the book under a different name, and basically put 4 of those books together into a book under another name. So while that book was not in production anymore, another version of it was, and he was not happy that this video was on Hackaday and all this kind of stuff, generating all this interest in it, and he wasn't getting anything from it. And I understand, like, the guy's a legend, and like, if you look at the comments of that video, there's just overwhelming numbers of people. It blew me away, and I know he's read the comments and all that kind of stuff, but like, the number of people that love him and love those books, and like, the number of people that he got interested in electronics, and it has to be in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, that he's directly responsible for that. And I made a video that just circumvented his mainstream of income. And so, I felt bad. Like, I legitimately felt bad. And he tried to get it taken down off PCBWay before he was able to get in contact with me. And it was just a thing. And it doesn't, like, I completely get it. And, if it was somebody else, I wouldn't really care. But when it's your quote unquote hero, that's just kind of the last person you want to do something like that to. And so, obviously he sent me a copy of that book signed. He sent me his memoir signed. It's called Maverick Scientist. You can get it on Amazon. I'll give links to these books because you should buy them. He's great. But there is also something I've designed. The next 5, each one of those boards has 4 circuits on there, and I've designed the first 5 of them. So that's the vast majority of the book is done. I haven't put the other projects up on PCBWay, and I haven't released a video because he very much doesn't want me to link to copyrighted materials. And to be honest, I don't really even, I've talked to him enough that I don't really want to do the wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Although he took these down off of archive.org, there's other ones that you can find. Like, I don't, I respect him and his work way too much to do that. So I'm just kind of in this position where it's like, I put all this work into something. I've loved the project. I've had fun with it. I got to meet him and, have conversations with him and all. That's great. But it also does take a lot of the fun out of it. The point of the video, the first if you watch the first one, I went through with my oscilloscope and with stuff and just basically showed how all of these circuits worked while showing the book. And he doesn't want me to like show the entirety of the book in the video, which again, I understand. But it also like, and while I respect that, like I also, it's just not worth my time. Like, I've got a real job and all that kind of stuff. So it's one of those things where I think just looking back on it, and this is kind of more of an existential thing. My 500th subscriber was Andreas Spies. I still can't pronounce his name, but legend electronics YouTuber, and just and all these different things. As I go back and look at YouTube, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, like all those things, like they don't really bring me that much joy, in making YouTube videos. So I really want to keep it in perspective where I make videos that I absolutely feel like making, and only when I feel like making them. And if people want to watch, that's fine. I'm going to concentrate on, if I make videos, I'm basically going to try to do bangers only. Like I'm only going to try to make videos that I think people are actually going to want to watch, because it's really not worth, I just better off not making videos on retro computers that people don't care about. But yeah, so I'm just kind of in this in between thing. It's not bad, not good, not anything. I just I want to make the video explaining why I'm not finishing that series, because there's some people pretty mad about it in the comments. One guy's yelling at me in all caps, telling me that I don't care and PCBWay doesn't care and nobody will answer his question when the other videos are coming out, and just it's hilarious. But I'm probably just going to drop all 4 of the next PCBs on PCBWay in one video and just lovingly explain that I'm not going to make the breakdowns and tell people where they could buy his real books, and probably leave it at that for that.
Let's be clear, though. You're not the one who posted his book on archive.org. You just
No,
posted
I'm
a
not.
link
I'm
that
not.
it was already there. Yeah.
Right. It's, yeah.
I mean,
No, I didn't copyright steal his book. It's already there.
I mean, that's...
And it's gone back up since then. I mean, it just,
Has it? Oh, I guess someone is...
there's other copies of it, if not later, I think. He might be on a mission to take them all down. I don't really know. And I don't blame him. I mean, so this guy has given his life to writing these books and all this stuff, and now he's retired, and this is his income. And so, like, I do get, like, it's so tough, because on one hand, like, when you're gone, I mean, we would love to have some kind of legacy like that. Like, even if my video was the only memory of his legacy, just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people saying how much they appreciated this guy, I mean, could basically fill an entire funeral, or whatever. I don't want to be morbid about it, but just that kind of thing.
Too late.
He is alive. He's alive and kicking.
I have to say,
I've greatly exaggerated his condition.
So I am not here to say that someone shouldn't be in control of their own copyright. So I'm good with Forrest wanting to keep his monetization. Where I have issues is when the book is no longer available. Like, honestly, I think the best solution to this problem, and obviously I'm on the outside, so this is just my opinion, but would be to have the ebooks for sale on your website, like, yeah, as Forrest, like not you specifically, but but if I was Forrest, and clearly people want these books, because you could tell by the secondary market, like they should just be available on his website for whatever the hell price he wants. I'm a college professor part-time, but part of my sort of ethos is that knowledge should be free, and failing that, it should be available. And it's his right not for them not to be free. I mean, they're fantastic. They look like handwritten crafts of art, right? Yeah. So it's up to him, to have them up for cost, but they should be available. That's the thing.
That is the thing too. Like, whenever his time does come, and those books aren't available on Amazon anymore. Like, whenever his time on Amazon comes, is probably the better way to say it. Like, it would be a crime for all that knowledge to be lost and not available on archive.com. Now, maybe the plan is for his kids to continue to sell things, and we haven't gotten that into it. And again, that would be his right too. But it's so good. Like, this stuff is so good and such great references, so nostalgic that it's just, I don't know. Like, I'm so torn about that. And that's the thing. Like, if I can't tell people to go steal the book off archive because I want everybody to have it, it does make making the video like not very interesting to me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm just looking, it's not there, none of his works at all are available at my public library. If I'm looking at, so I can see that someone is selling 150 PDFs of Forrest Mims on DVD on eBay for $20 Canadian. That is,
dude, we should
not legit.
That's a deal. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes. No, that is not legit.
Yeah, but like it's obvious that it's not legit. So someone is selling his copyrighted works. It's crazy. I mean, yeah. he just needs to put it on your website, Mr. Mims. You know what? Come on to the podcast.
Him, like, start a Patreon. Like, you know, because this was all going on when the video was about at 5, 6, 7,000 views. So, like, there was part of me that, well, and here's the other thing too. Like, my direct line to him was basically like, you don't think I would want the affiliate marketing money of selling all the books that you would sell? Like, it would have completely benefited me to have valid links to this book if I could have sold it. I would absolutely love the affiliate money from Amazon for selling all these books if I had known that they were available.
Yeah, so he has a website, forrestmims.org, and you look up his publications. First of all, his website looks like it was built in 1992. And then it says, the Forrest Mims notebook series are now published by Master Publishing and can be ordered from the Master Publishing site at www.forrestmims.com. And I click it, and it is a 404 not found. It doesn't exist. And then it says the book is available at amazon.com with, let's see, I'm just going to check here, and at Radio Shack stores. So obviously it hasn't been updated in a long time, because I'm looking, I mean, there are some on Amazon.com, some of his things, but I'm not sure if they're new.
I had a really hard, so even when he sent me the links, like Amazon does some weird stuff, like he sent me links to his own books, and I was getting links to like Amazon.mx and things like that. So even when I linked to it, I'm not 100% sure, because I was going back and forth with him. Like, I want to link to not just your book, but you selling your book. And I want to say, I mean, this is, you know, I am not knocking him at all. He is a gem of a human being. And I really like it. Just one of those things where like it took him off guard. You know, I mean, essentially, like, yeah, it caught him off guard. He wasn't expecting it. He got a lot of, you know, people contacting him all of a sudden, and, you know, he's on Hackaday and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
Gadget Reboots making follow-up videos.
Did he actually? I have not been following electronics YouTube. I've been brain off. I've been, like, last night I stayed up until 2 a.m. listening to the H3 podcast do a poker tournament, essentially. So yeah, I've been away, so to speak. But
I will say, so on like a side note, like I've gotten very the video that I did on repairing a Cricut, you know, one of those crafting machines, stuff like that. The feedback on that has been phenomenal, and people have been just so freaking nice, thanking me for saving their $300 machines by taking. I never thought people would sit down and watch a 30-minute video of me taking one of those things apart and explaining how it worked, you know, how to fix it and stuff. But people have been so nice about that, and even my KeyCAD video, you know, people have just been really grateful about this. So I do think if I make videos, I'm gonna make more how-to broad things that I think have kind of broad appeal and that are actually worth watching, as opposed to the random crap that I have been putting on my channel.
I mean, you got 27,000 views on changing a Volkswagen key fob battery.
Yeah. And you know what? Every day or two, I get batteries on. I see the batteries coming through on my Amazon sales.
There we go. You got 32,000 views on repairing a KitchenAid mixer.
Yeah.
Let's see. You've got
Talking the office chair,
75,000 views on the office chair. It's your
sticking
fourth
hose clamps.
it's your fourth most viewed video.
I think so. At different times, people have changed. So I'm so influential in the hose clamp market. For those of you that don't know, if you have one of those like office chairs from Office Depot or whatever, eventually, if you're heavy or whatever, they'll start to just sink down while you're sitting on it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to stick a hose clamp on there, one of those like little screw things that'll rip your hand apart. But anyway, a little hose clamp, screw it on there. A 2-minute video, and for one thing, I'm still sitting in that chair today, and it works perfectly well. But I've actually seen Amazon listings like over time have changed the listing of their hose clamp to say chair repair.
Are you serious?
Because that video, yeah, the link seems to go to different places from time to time when you click on it. But I've clicked on it before, and it'll say like, or when they come through on my thing, they'll come through as like hose clamp, chair repair, screw thing.
Wow,
That's how influential I can be.
I'm checking it out on the Canadian Amazon right now. Well, I'm gonna see. Oh, there's commercial products for this now.
Well, people thought it was a good idea, I guess.
Yeah, so they're the fancier hose clamps where it's like a U-shaped clamp with two bolts going through it, and they put a rubber insert in the middle. Let me send you this. Just people at home will have to follow the link in the show notes. But there we go. Sorry about the tracking link there.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's a great idea.
So, you
know, it's funny. I'm guessing that's like an electric.
Like a conduit
thing.
So if I can make a suggestion for your next YouTube video is order a set of these and do a comparison.
Yeah.
And then you can sell these, which I'm sure have more margin.
Yeah. It says it's exclusively available for Business Prime members, I guess here.
Probably because it's the Prime deal.
Yeah. Funny. Yeah, they've got is that like a little bushing in the middle, like a little red bushing?
Yeah. It's like a little rubber like tube.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Rubber fastening sleeve. That's nice. I'll tell you the hose clamp works really well.
There we go.
Especially double them up and you're good.
I'm gonna make a video just to spite you. I'm gonna make the exact same video you made and see if I make affiliate revenue. All right.
I've re-uploaded my own videos to my other channel.
There we go.
The heck of it, yeah.
So look, the longer this goes, the longer I have in editing. So is there anything you want to is on your mind that you want to leave the viewers with? Like maybe some thoughts that you would share in a YouTube video, but you don't make them anymore?
Oh, see, I've got some fun stuff coming up on DuPont wires and stuff like that. I don't want to get in 3D printing talk. Nah, honestly, no. Just enjoy YouTube. Be nice to the creators. I'm concerned for creators in general. I'm concerned for their mental health and the amount of time that they take away from other things they could be doing and the amount of time they put into these for what they get. I've been really racking my brain a lot about, we think about the YouTube algorithm as like the YouTube algorithm is sitting there trying to make you watch as many videos as possible, and especially videos that are profitable to them as possible. But I think the algorithm is also designed to give creators just enough of a carrot that they'll keep making videos. I think just enough to kind of dangle that carrot out in front of you so you keep doing it. I'm concerned, like the one thing that I've enjoyed about being a quote unquote YouTuber is the connection that it's given me with you and other YouTubers. And I'm not talking about you, I'm not going to say it, but it does, like the spending time talking to them about real stuff concerns me for like the mental health side of what trying on YouTube can do to people. So be nice to them with the comments and the other stuff like that.
You hear that, guys? Be nice, okay? Yes, I understand that transistors used as a switch is not their only use. I get it. I understand. I can only take that
screwdriver is a freaking piece of crap.
No, it's great. I actually love it.
Just kidding.
To be honest, it's great. I just wish it wasn't so expensive.
Yeah.
Turns out doing stuff right costs money, and doing stuff in Canada costs money too.
Paying a lot of lawyers costs money too.
So you know what they said on the latest WAN show, that they don't even use lawyers' services enough to retain a lawyer. So they're a like 110 plus employee company, and they don't have a lawyer on retainer.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Seems reasonable.
I guess because they're Canadian. If you were American, you'd be suing everyone just because.
It's just not worth suing for Canadian dollars. We just kind of figured that out.
Yeah, what are you going to do with it? Buy a house? No. All right, man. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and saving my listeners from listening to an hour of me ranting to myself again.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
And I hope we're going to see some YouTube videos pretty shortly. Is there any specific video that you're proud of that underperformed that we can link people to at the end of this podcast?
I say keep an eye out for a hot DuPont video that I've got coming out. I've got some hot DuPont talk coming up, showing you 20 of my favorite tips for DuPont wires. I use those things like crazy, and I kind of came up with a bunch of fun stuff with that. So I say keep an eye out for that one. And then listen to the Simple Electronics podcast.
Yes, please do. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.